Hey everybody, it's Scotty from Scotty's Record Shop with another artist review. This time of Ringo Starr, Ringo. Partially inspired by one of the many wonderful Beatle-loving VC members, Mean Mr. Mayo, Joe. If you don't know about his channel, really check it out. He's been doing these reviews of solo Beatle albums. He's been doing it for a while now, and he goes into it song by song, tears everything apart, does a really fair job. And he's reviewed a few solo Beatle albums that really are not generally loved by the public, and he's kind of almost makes you want to listen to him again and try him again for the first time, or for the 15th time, or whatever. Check Joe's channel out. He did a couple of reviews of Ringo Starr albums, and I was watching them recently, and I thought, oh, you know what? I've done John, I've done Paul, I've done George, what I have by them anyway, on vinyl, but I've yet to do Ringo, and I'm like, okay, I gotta do Ringo. Ringo Starr is Ringo Starr. Ringo's You can't really put Ringo on the same plane as the other Beatles when you're listening to his albums. And I don't mean that as a knock, or because a lot of people will knock him. He can't sing, blah, 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 blah. Not really true. He can sing better than me. You don't want me to sing to you right now and prove that, okay? He can sing okay. His thing is he surrounds himself with wonderful musicians, great songs, and he's taken a few chances that some other Beatle members, well, up until recently, Paul McCartney finally caught on and did it. I'll show you what. Actually, we'll go to the first album because that's the album I'm talking about. 1970, Sentimental Journey. Let me see if I can make sure the shrink doesn't affect here. It's got the shrink on her. An album full of standards. Sentimental Journey obviously being one of them, but a great song selection on this album. It's on Apple, as you would imagine. There's your. Can never get used to videotaping stuff here. Everything's backwards. And I'm French. You'd think I'd just deal with it anyway. So anyway, a really, really good album. Nowadays, you got Rod Stewart, who's been doing these standard albums. Thankfully, he's finally put out a rock and roll album, which isn't bad, by the way. Check it out. Paul McCartney just last year puts out his Kisses on the Bottom, a great record. A lot of my friends can't stand it. I like it. I like standards because I grew up listening to that stuff. I grew up listening to big band music with my family, with my parents. Sentimental Journey. There's nothing rock and roll about this record. Great musicianship, though. And for some reason, Ringo's voice just kind of works. He's surely not a Frank Sinatra, but it kind of just works. It's Ringo. Probably say that 20 times. This next record that he put out in 1970, he went from one end of the spectrum to the opposite end. Neither one of them. Rock and roll was somewhere in between or something. But I respect him for taking the chances that he took. However, when I was a kid, or when I was younger, I was a kid, in the 70s, and this next album, I hated it. And I'm not sure if it's because I just didn't like country music, or if it didn't work for me, or whatever. I've grown to appreciate this record. It's not my favorite by him, but I've grown. It works. His voice kind of sort of works. He's kind of simple. Great. He went to Nashville and recorded a flat-out country album. Some people I've seen talk about this, and it's like, yeah, it's a great country rock album. Personally, there's nothing rock about this. It's a country album, a flat-out country album. It sounds just like a lot of the other stuff that was coming out in 1970 and in the late 60s and stuff. Bukus of Blues. Ringo had commented he felt that this album would have done a lot better if he would have gone back and done some classic country songs. Instead, this is all new stuff. I believe everything on here is original stuff. There's your... And again, I showed you the back, I believe. And here you have an Apple label again, upside down. Let's turn it right side down. Nothing spectacular about the label other than the fact that it's Apple, which is wonderful. Again, I can deal with this album a lot more now. Go into it with the right frame of mind, okay? But I got to tell you, my daughter, I was listening to this a couple of days ago, and my 13-year-old daughter was listening, had no idea. She loves the Beatles, and even like some of the solo stuff, but had no idea. It didn't click that this was Ringo Starr, and she thought this was horrible. But then again, 13 years old. When I was 13 years old, I didn't like it either. But like I said, I've come to appreciate it a little bit more. Blues of blues. Okay, our next one, 1971. He puts out, and I should have grabbed these 45s, but I didn't. He puts out "It Don't Come Easy" in 1971. All kinds of friends, George and all these other people playing on this record. One of my favorite Beatle solo songs, honestly. Just a great, great, great song. And then in 72, he comes back with another single, unrelated to an album, with "Back Off Boogaloo." Another just killer. It's like almost like, where did these come from? You know what I mean? It's like Ringo really was turning out to be quite the solo artist. In 1973, he didn't put out a great solo song. He put out a great solo album. This next album can go toe to toe with, as far as I'm concerned, with any Beatles solo album. It's a great record. Pretty much all the Beatles, I believe. Joe, me and Mr. Mayo did a review of this. He was a lot more thorough than I'm going to be. He was talking about people who played on it. There were song credits that were messed up on original pressings and stuff. If you want to find out more about it, go check them out. Am I plugging your channel, buddy? I hope so. Anyway, Ringo, 1973. This was just a fantastic album. You'd never think you'd say Ringo Starr would put out a fantastic album. He had a lot of help, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, so many great artists. Go see Joe's review. He'll be a lot more thorough about pictures and everything else in here. But comes with a booklet. Let me show you the inside of this baby. It's gatefold. A big star on the inside. And I'll show you this has got a nice custom label as well. Really just a fantastic album from Ringo. Honestly, my personal opinion, this was his peak right here. It all happened for him in 73. 74, the next album, it wasn't too shabby either, quite honestly. They kind of followed the same formula. I hate using that word, but getting a lot of famous people in, maybe doing some covers and stuff, some older songs, but it worked well. And that's this album. Good Night, Vienna. I love the song, the No-No song. Some people think, oh, that's such a stupid song, but I really love that. Even as a kid, I loved it. I played the 45 to death back then. The custom label, I really dig that. I think that's really kind of cool. Again, kind of following that same theme from the Ringo album. Get all kinds of friends in, have a lot of people writing some really great songs, and you get a really good album from Ringo. Really good performance. Okay. 1975. If there's one album that you really need to get by Ringo, if you don't want to get any other album by him, on vinyl anyway, it's this one. Blast from Your Past. This is the first place you'd be able to get It Don't Come Easy and Back Off Boogaloo. Those two singles. This was 75. This would be the last thing that would be on Apple. I do have a beef with this album. As great as it is, and it's a kind of a silly beef, but there's your label. The silliest beef is that it's too darn short. It's kind of weird, but this album just seems to fly right by. I don't know actually literally how long it is, but it's a fairly short album, comparably speaking. And they could have added on a track or two more, and good tracks. There's plenty of them, and really made a more robust collection. But if you got to get one, there you go. Blast from Your Past. Easy to get. Shouldn't cost you too much. Apple, by 1976, gone. Um, so Ringo goes, at least here in America, and that's one thing I want to make clear too. These are American albums. I'm not going to show Old Wave because I don't have that on vinyl. And Scouse the Mouse. Did I say that right? Probably. Kind of a children's record that was put out in '77. That was put out in England. I think the closest Old Wave got to America initially, that was an album he put out in '83-ish, was Canada. I think there's a Canadian pressing flying around. I just haven't found it yet. I'll get it. Not a bad album, but next one is this one. Now, this is a gatefold. Unfortunately, I really don't want to take the plastic off of this. But trust me, it is a gatefold. He, at this point in time, let me pull this out. There's your inner sleeve. At this point in time, he's on Atlantic Records. He did a couple of albums for Atlantic. This album really wasn't a bad, because it's kind of following that same thing. Let's get a bunch of my friends in and have them write some great songs and you know, it didn't do as good, and it's not as good as the previous two albums, but it's still not something to snub your nose at either. It's not a bad album. Dose of Rock and Roll did really quite well for a single. A couple of other singles, I think, off of this. But that's 1976. Now, 77, it kind of crashed. They tried a different, here I go with that, the F word again, a different formula. And, this has got, anyway, my shrink is kind of coming off of some of these. Keep it on as long as I can. Ringo the Fourth. Okay, so we kind of changed his style. We don't use as many well-known people, and it kind of crashed. The album kind of didn't do so hot. But with all of these albums, you can find some good tracks on them. You know, and this album isn't going to cost you like $30 or something. You know what I mean? It's not that. It's on the Atlantic. It's not going to cost that much. So, I mean, there's enough good on this to pick it up. You know, if you're a Ringo fan, if you're a Beatle fan, the odds are good you have it already. But if you see it in like for a couple $3, you know, pick it up. It's you know. Okay, Atlantic cans him. Imagine that, a Beatle getting canned. But it you know, they just were done with him. So we have a new record, 1978. And at this point in time, Ringo was really hitting the wall in a lot of parts of his life. Musically, he was his substance abuse issues were really getting out of hand, and he really didn't care, obviously, by the title and the look of this album, Bad Boys. Now, I think Joe did a review of this, I seem to remember. And it got me to listen to this one again a while ago. And this was one of those, I really didn't like this album very much. And I've listened to it with a kind of a new set of ears. Here's your label. There's his new label. For one album, anyway. And again, I don't like everything on this, but in retrospect, it's not that bad, you know. So then we move on to 1981, and the here we go with that F word again. The formula of getting some friends in to play on these records, getting Beatles people to write some stuff on these, and it worked. This record actually was not a bad record. Right here. Stop. Smell the Roses. Rack My Brain, I believe, was the single off this. Is bigger, not a huge hit, but this really isn't a bad record. I'll show you the inner sleeve of this one. And then I believe it's on Boardwalk, yeah. Their label, shortly after this, the label crapped out, and I think that might have had something to do with this record not quite doing quite as well as I think that it should have. But anyway, fairly short amount. I mean, we went only, what, 11 years. Um, of course, the Old Wave album came out in '83. And if you can find that on vinyl, it's not a bad record at all. Um, Again, it's not a Ringo, but it's not a bad album. Um, that's basically my review. I have seen Ringo live on one of his all-star things. He had people from he had Ian Hunter. He had Sheila E., who was just an amazing drummer. Who else was there? Greg Lake, I believe, was there, and Roger Hodgson. And I'm sure I missed somebody, but Howard Jones. Is that who it was? Anyway, on keyboards, and it was an amazing show. So if you ever get a chance to see Ringo live, this is where I'm going with it, with one of his all-star situations. You gotta do it. You really have to do it. So I hope that this encourages you to check out some Ringo albums, and to maybe look at Ringo with a new set of glasses or whatever, or a new set of ears. Check them out. Okay, that's my artist review. I fall apart at the end, don't I? My artist review of Ringo Starr. Until next time, everybody. Peace and love.